I was going to start this stream on the High Line, but we've got something unique right here. And I was just talking about it the other day. That's only the second one I've ever seen in the United States on the road, but it's a Toyota Century. I think it's even like a whole other brand. They don't call it Toyota, but this is the Japanese Rolls-Royce. Oh, look, and you can only get it with left-hand drive. How you doing? Cool, unique car. So this is a 12-cylinder Japanese Rolls-Royce, but that dude is just chilling. That's a strange thing to see on the filthy, polluted streets of New York. But we're not talking about 12-cylinder Toyotas and Japanese Rolls-Royces. Talking about Felix Sater. The jury was deliberating when I left there a little over an hour ago. I was going to stay, but after briefly consulting some of the attorneys, nobody knows. I mean, they could come out of there in 5 minutes and say guilty, not guilty. They could take 2 days. So I sort of have learned what I'm going to learn from that trial, I believe. The summations are done, all that cross-examination and everything. It's interesting to observe, I don't know that I've been in a trial that many days in a row. Even my own, I never got to trial on any of those lawsuits that they have. It was hearings. Robert David Steele's stroked out attorney was too stupid to put together a case that could go to trial. So it was interesting just seeing the procedural quirkiness of how kind of like, what's the word? Archaic, I guess, that court is. Knocking on the door and all this weird kind of stuff. But anyway, the point is, there was some more facts and details that came out. This guy doing the summation for the plaintiffs, an attorney with Boies Schiller Flexner named Mr. Zach. It's strange. I couldn't find him. I gotta look at the pleadings and see. Maybe I misheard his name. I thought his name was Mr. Zach, but then I looked on the Boies Schiller Flexner website and I couldn't find him. The lead guy, I don't know who's the lead. This guy, Mr. Zach, has been doing most of the talking, although when I first arrived, the talking was being done by that Matthew Schwartz, who I looked him up and he was on the website. It turns out that guy was a U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York from 2005, I think for about 9 years or something. Comey left there in 2003, right? I think he was there for only a short time because he became Assistant Attorney General. So that's interesting. I spoke with Matthew Schwartz in the hallway and asked him if he thought the jury would have a decision. I mean, it's like asking the doctor if your person in surgery is going to live. I mean, we think so, but we don't know, and we don't know how long the surgery is going to take. And anyway, the point is I left because just sitting around there, I would have liked to have been there when the decision happened, but I've got so much other stuff to do, and it's freezing cold. It was like really uncomfortable to be in the courtroom, and I mean, I've been wearing long sleeve shirts to be there, but then you're hot. Anyway, so today, the other interesting thing that happened is that Felix Sater, who, since assaulting me, he just hasn't said too much at all. He's been like glaring at me in the court and doing all this kind of tough guy sort of stuff. I guess to intimidate me? I don't know what he's trying to accomplish. But he was extremely talkative today, mouthing things to me that I couldn't understand, and even speaking to me. So I was there pretty early today because I had observed that no matter how much before I would get there, he'd say, okay, we're gonna start everything at 10, and we get there at 9:30, and they're already underway. So I got, what is this? Are they making a Saw movie? Anyway, when I got there at about 9:30, No, 9 I got there. Nothing was going on. Tom Sema was already there. Oh yeah, and Mr. Cumble, you know, I decided sort of yesterday that I was like, I don't know why I've been being so hard on this guy. I mean, I do know why. At first, I presumed he was just another one of Felix Sater's attorneys and some sort of law partner of Jonathan Snyder, who I've got quite a beef with. And he was with those guys when I got assaulted, so I just presumed he was part of their team. And I was being truthful. I mean, maybe it wasn't that friendly, but the things I was saying were my actual opinions of the guy. And I saw him today. His father was friendly to me. That was actually what opened the door to me being like, why am I being rude to this guy? His father was a nice guy. And so just at the end of the trial, I went up to him and said, hey, you know, I apologize if any of my criticisms have been insulting. And he said, well, you know, you were a prick and this and that. So it was just like, all right, you know what? That was a sincere apology, but I guess you are a dick. And the apology was somewhat rescinded. I don't understand. I mean, I don't give a shit about that guy, but I just figured it might be nice to apologize to him. So rather than just say, hey, okay, thanks, and say nothing, which really would have been the more diplomatic thing for a lawyer to do, he just cemented that, yeah, I think you're a prick, and so, okay, fine. Fuck you, Cumble. But let's talk about Felix Sater. So the judge finally shows up and he explains that we're gonna go through, this is gonna be, you know, Mr. Zach's opportunity to finish the summation. They talk about how much time he has left based on, I guess, what he requested or what he's been allotted and what he already used. So they just went over some technical stuff and then gave a break. So I did a lot of sitting around there today, which is another reason why I left. I've just got so much stuff to do and I'm just sitting on this uncomfortable wood bench in a refrigerator where no one is saying anything. But so Felix Sater comes over to me and he says, oh, you know, Arcanum, what did he say? He said, the chairman of BTA Bank is Kenneth Rakashev. His father-in-law is Imangi Tasman, something. I can't read his sloppy handwriting. He looks like he's 9 years old. But this is the head of Vladimir Putin's military alliance, CSTO. And he said, look it up on Wikipedia. So this is bullshit, in my opinion, that Felix Sater is planting on me. I don't care about, frankly, anything going on in Kazakhstan. Sorry to anybody from Kazakhstan, but you know, this country is falling apart and this city is falling apart. So I primarily care about this and me. I'm not trying to be selfish, I'm trying to be honest. If I told people that, I'm interested in doing Crowdsource the Truth to help and protect Felix Sater because he got shafted by the system, isn't that a little bit difficult to believe? If I told you that I was hired by Felix Sater and he paid me to make a website for him, that would make sense. If I told you that I got screwed and my business got destroyed and I'm pursuing the people who are doing that, that also makes sense. People who don't have sensible motivations, they make me very suspicious. I'm talking about that stupid beer store employee who was just so adamant about compelling everyone to listen to her version of the story, which is remarkably similar to Felix Sater's version of the story, which is a complicated tangle of lies and nonsense. So Sater wrote all this out, and I mean, that's a significant, he wrote it, this is his handwriting, can you see that? So I mean, that's a significant difference as compared to not talking to me or glaring at me or whatever. He wants me to know this. He wants me to go research what he thinks is important. This is a total George Webb social engineering. Why isn't Jason talking about, you know, Kenneth Rakashev and whoever this Taz Mag, I don't know what the hell he wrote, and I don't give a shit. So, I mean, he's like, oh, Putin, yeah, you know, this is Putin's alliance, and I don't care. And then, so the other thing is Felix Sater is busily running around today telling people, so he sees me talking to Matthew Schwartz, who is actually a big muckety-muck at that boys Schiller. I forget what his title was, executive, he's the chairman of something at that law firm. And he looked pretty young to me, but he's got an extensive resume and a lot of impressive experience. I mean, obviously, if you're a law firm and you got partners there who were U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York, that's an experienced guy. And they said that he specializes in government, this or that. But anyway, so when I was having this, it was on the 8th floor. I discovered like yesterday that they have a cafeteria on the 8th floor. I should have known that, but anyway, they were all sort of just hanging out there. And I asked Matthew Schwartz, I was just asking him, first of all, if I could speak to him after the trial is over, or his clients, or Mr. Zach, or whatever. And, you know, Felix Sater knows what I'm going to say to them. I'm not keeping anything secret. They just didn't want to talk to me because, you know, whatever, lawyer reasons, it's not appropriate, get a non-party involved. They just don't know who I am. And also, I learned more things today about why they rightly should be very reluctant about talking to some stranger who just appears. You know, they don't know who I am or what my motivation is. Maybe I work for Felix Sater. These are all reasonable things for them to presume and be very wary of. Remember, they've got this whole issue with Peter Garsky. He's the guy who said that he didn't like the speed at which Latham and Watkins was getting this confidential assistance agreement written. Now, I learned some more about Peter Garsky. I found it's P-E-D-E-R. And Garsky, I was spelling like G-A-R-S-K-Y. No, he's G-A-R-S-K-E. Peter Garsky. I think he might be, I don't know where he's from, but we're told he's dead. He died in 2016, just a few months after this alleged June 6th meeting, which Mr. Zach did an impressive job of attacking with facts. I just don't see how Felix Sater will not lose this case. Well, let me rephrase that. I do see a way that he might prevail, but let me go into some more of the notes that I took. Uh-oh, look at this. Some sort of musical performance happening on the High Line, it looks like. And here's an armed park guard. Don't see that too often. Maybe that's because we started seeing homeless people and also migrants selling fruit and whatnot. This guy looks like maybe a DJ. I don't know what he's got going, but some sort of a party happening. Is a party going on? What's happening?
Jerome Ellis is playing there.
Who is?
Jerome Ellis.
Cool.
Yeah, you'll see them.
Jerome Ellis. Never heard of that person, but I guess now they have concerts right here. That's fun. How many? You get like 50 people. But let's just talk about, oh yeah, so Sater wrote this note for me, and then I was interviewing him again, standing right there in the courtroom. So what happens is the judge says, okay, we're going on a break, bangs the thing, walks out of the room, and then they like all rise, and then it's like, and everybody kind of walks out. So during the Felix Sater and I are exchanging these notes, and he's writing this thing, and I said to him, I started asking him why it took him 3 months to get this appeal bond when he was in Rikers Island. Like, why didn't you think of that right away? Because I'm trying to get to, you know, did somebody from the government come and say, hey, fluent Russian criminal, why don't we get you out of Rikers Island and you can come work for us? I still think that's what happened. So Felix Sater said that Robert Wolf did the appeal bond. And I said, but I thought you said your lawyer screwed it up so you lost the appeal. And he said, no, my first lawyer failed to preserve something in the record, and Robert Wolf became his lawyer. I asked him who was that first lawyer. He said he didn't remember his name. I don't believe that. It's plausible, it's possible, but Felix Sater strikes me as an extremely sharp guy. Sharp is how I would describe him. Quick-witted, crafty, devious. He can think on his feet quite clearly. And he's into lying to people and tricking people, as far as I can tell. Seems to be his primary skill. I mean, he's told us that. He's been involved in fraud, stock fraud, been convicted of that. So saying that he's a skillful liar, it's just a statement of fact. It's not even something he could threaten to sue over. But so he's saying that Robert Wolf did that appeal bond. Doesn't mean that Andrew Weissman or somebody like that didn't say, hey, Robert Wolf, why don't you go get this guy? And in fact, that is the way they would do it. Nothing these guys do is ever direct. It's like we've been learning about all this money laundering stuff where they just have all these different accounts. And I did speak to Charles last night. He explained some of these things to me. Oh yeah, and also Charles will be joining me. That's the other reason why I wanted to leave court a little early, is that Charles will be joining me later tonight for an episode of Charles Ortel is Closing In, but he's closing in now from a vastly different time zone, so we couldn't do it at 3 o'clock. But I'm still convinced that this guy, Robert Wolf, would be the cutout for whatever government agency wants to get Felix Sater out of Rikers Island, if that is what happened. I mean, according to him, he just gets randomly approached by the DIA, I guess while he's in Russia. I mean, that's why, see, I hate it when I'm not recording something when somebody speaks to me, because I can only write so fast. And when I was talking to him, I wasn't like transcribing what he was saying. We were having a conversation and then I wrote this down immediately after. But the appeal bond came up 1 month after he was in prison. And I mean, again, if it was something that he knew about, why wouldn't that come up the first day? It feels to me like he's working through the system. Somebody knows he's there, or maybe they even say, let him enjoy it for a month or two. Obviously, you want him to understand how terrible the situation he's in is. And he was facing 1.5 to 4.5 years. I don't know if that would have been in Rikers Island, but it's a high probability you're going to die in that time frame. So letting him experience it for a month or 2 or 3 seems like what these guys would do. So he gets this appeal bond. That came up 1 month after he was in prison. He doesn't remember his first lawyer's name. Maybe you're going to have a mental block on that, but I don't think so. This is a guy who needs to remember a lot of complicated things to keep his lies going. You're telling me you forget the name of the lawyer who did something that caused you to spend even more time in jail? You didn't sit there in Otisville the whole time thinking about what a piece of shit that guy is? I don't know. And he said, I don't remember, quite quickly. He didn't like say, you know what, I don't remember. He just right away said, I don't remember. And it came up when Mr. Zach was speaking today, the thousands and thousands of pages of depositions that Felix Sater has participated in. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's been more, coached by lawyers as to how to answer questions you don't want to answer than Felix Sater. I don't remember. It's a good way to not answer a question. What do you do with that? He doesn't remember. So he doesn't remember. And so then they come back in and we're waiting for the judge and they're chit-chatting, and Cumble says, he's done only one other jury trial in his life. And then Sater says it shows. Now, remember, Cumble is not representing Sater. He's representing Mem Energy and Mendel Moshkin, but that's Felix Sater's friend, and they're sitting on the same defendant's table. Why is Felix Sater making fun of this lawyer who is essentially sort of on his side? Maybe he's just a dick. That's really possible. But even if you're a dick, there should be a certain sense of self-preservation. And given the way the trial has gone and the amount of millions of dollars that he's going to be on the hook for if he loses, it just seemed like a weird, I don't know. I think I'd be sitting there kind of anxious, nervous. That's me. Maybe Felix Sater is different. Maybe this is how he deals with nervous anxiety. But he's making fun of his own lawyer, and they all laugh. To me, it just conveys a sense, just an utter lack of urgency at the defendant's table, and they've been putting up a horrible defense. Mr. Zach today called it a nonsense defense, and he didn't just say that disparagingly. He provided kind of a lot of evidence that made that clear. Certainly, if I knew nothing about this case, and frankly, as far as the details go, I didn't know really anything other than the fact that Felix Sater is represented by Jonathan Snyder, who I don't like, and that Felix Sater was involved at Trump Tower. I know a lot of stuff about things other than the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan versus Felix Sater, but I know a lot more about the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan versus Felix Sater now. And so what I'm getting at is, as a layperson coming in there, having known nothing about this before, just listening to both sides, I know how I would vote if I were on the jury. And it also reiterated why what Julie was doing was so dishonest. Because I'm not telling people not to look at what she's writing. I encourage people to go look at her Felix Sater, what is it called? FelixSaterInformation.com? Research, FelixSaterResearch.com. Go look at it. And I'm not even necessarily saying that everything in there is false. My opinion, and you might form a different opinion from looking at it, my opinion is someone has motivated her to create a blog that just promotes the Felix Sater story. See, that's kind of interesting, that photograph, because it sets a time frame for New York by having this Ford Fusion taxi cab. You'll look at that in 30 years and be like, remember those old cars? And go look at one from 1980 and you'll feel like you're looking back into the, Fred Flintstone. What does that say? Highline ruin art? What the hell is that? What is that? Something about that says Nazi shit to me. What is ruin? Or is it Kuhn? It seems like ruin. What are we looking at here? So they're laughing at Cumble. So then they have Mr. Fletcher, who is the courtroom deputy. He gives the lawyers the lunch orders for the jurors to inspect the lunch menu. I'm sure there's a good reason for that, but it struck me as strange. Are they going to poison the jurors? Like, what does looking at the menu tell you? It's like, I object to chicken salad. Like, what? Anyway, they did that. And then the summation continues with Mr. Zach. And he went through each of the charges. So they're talking about unjust enrichment, conversion, and money have or had, something like that. And they didn't care if the money was dirty. The summation was a very good part for me to see, because each side gets to go through everything that they think is the most important aspect of the case. This is like, hey, jury, you heard all this stuff. Here's the most important stuff. And while you're deliberating, if you want to see any of these exhibits or the transcript or whatever, you can. But here's what you should be thinking about. And remember, they went up to 590 something on the exhibit. So I don't know if that means that there's 590 pages, but I think it does, because they've been just cycling through pages of bank statements and transcripts from depositions and PowerPoint slides from expert witnesses showing flowcharts of money going all over the place. They had a lot of evidence. And then the judge, to be fair, the judge said, doesn't matter the amount of evidence, it's the quality of the evidence. But what I would say is, I don't think that Boyce Schiller was overwhelming the jury with stupid evidence to try to baffle them with nonsense. It seemed like every piece of evidence that they showed was relevant, important, not just relevant, it was like revelatory. It was like, whoa, holy cow. There was a lot of moments where there was holy cow stuff. So he talks about how this worldwide freezing order, I believe it is somehow got to do with the SWIFT system. So who enforces that kind of international stuff? I don't know. But I guess it's just understood among like decent lawyers and business people in whatever country that if you're in the United States and the United Kingdom, maybe it's like extradition stuff, because it's basically the UK saying, hey, this is a criminal company and the assets are frozen. So if you're in the United States saying, oh, well, I don't care, I'm not a citizen, I'm not a subject of the British Crown, is what Felix Sater said, but I think if you kill someone in England and come back to the United States, they would send you there. Like, this is the whole problem Julian Assange was just having. I don't think you can just ignore the laws of England, but that was his excuse. So Zach reminded the jury that you can't do that. He said that they created a propaganda campaign. One of the things that I haven't spoken about but came up in the trial was that there was, in this British trial, the judge is apparently Tony Blair's brother. So they said that that somehow was proof that the judge is corrupt. It's interesting. I've got this battery of evidence that shows that, what the hell are they building here? We got a water slide coming to the Standard Hotel. We have a tube. I've got all this evidence that shows that Felix Sater signed agreements, seems to know and have an existing relationship with the judge. Incidentally, same judge who has an existing relationship with Adam Sharp. It really feels like Judge Caproni is trying to aggregate and control cases having to do with me. But he says, oh, no. But just because this judge, his brother is Tony Blair, he's corrupt. I mean, so Tony Blair's brother can't have any kind of job, I guess, according to that theory. But look at these crazy looking, prioritizing plant from structure. I bet you could learn a lot just by coming and reading these things and looking at these different plants. So they said, you know, according to Zach, Felix Sater and also Mendel Moshkin, allegedly, according to those guys, they had a propaganda campaign, and you know what? I think he might be right, because when you look at it, you know, they're publishing this article in the Italian magazine. It is really the exact same approach that George's brother takes. You know, you have these fake stories that are meant to damage the reputation of the person and to be used in court and stuff like that. And so with George's brother, he's doing that through blogs and other stupid bloggers and other Twitter people and other, weird, stupid things that he does. These guys are doing it at a kind of a higher level using magazines. And also, by the way, isn't it well known, Spycraft, to plant stories in foreign publications and then, send that foreign publication story to some domestic newspapers so that they cover it and they can propagate stories by doing that. And it's, by the way, that's the same sort of thing that they're describing, using these cutouts, these intermediaries, these shills, alter egos. They have all kinds of different names for it. But basically, all the Boyce Schiller people are talking about how this cadre of individuals with complicated Kazakh names are essentially cutouts for the Krapanovs and for Ablyazov and for Felix Sater. He's got all these different companies that he's sending money to. But the way that Zach laid it out, it just seems so clear that this whole entire thing with the confidential assistance agreement was a ruse to get Sater at least off the hook, because they went through elements in the confidential agreement today that made it clear that they never had any intention to pay Felix Sater, and everything that they're doing is just, trying to get their sham over the line. So he didn't care. He's not part of the British account. Tony Blair, yeah, and they did a lot of fake transactions to hide where the money was going, and he cites all this language about how, transactions with no actual business purpose, like you just gift a $20 million company or whatever to somebody, that is suspicious. I mean, it could happen if somebody's a crazy billionaire and wants to give somebody, family member or whatever, their company, you could do it. But I mean, it would need to be like your Elon Musk and your son is taking over the tube company, the boring company, or whatever. That's a transaction that if he gifted that whole entire company to a 21-year-old son and said, you go run it, he can do that. But if it's Krapanov or whatever, just gifting a company to Felix Sater, why did you do that? What's the reason? It doesn't really pass the test. So, and they said it doesn't matter, because what they were getting at there is separating out all the different defendants. He said, okay, they're all sitting at the same table, but remember, these are different things. Today was a little bit complicated and boring, and then I think towards the end, the jury might have been losing focus. I know I was. But this is less, well, when the judge was talking, I mean, when Mr. Zach was talking, I was quite compelled by what he was saying, because it's facts and details about the case. But one of the issues is that Mendel Moshkin, he's on the hook for much lower dollar amounts and stuff, and he's been accused of, doing something with this mortgage, this note that they bought, and then somehow Neil Bush with the Chinese investors took over them all. So Mendel got paid for that because he was the guy who brought in Neil Bush and all his Chinese buddies. And one of the things that they're saying is that this was an unlicensed real estate transaction. And so they're saying, no, he wasn't a real estate broker and it wasn't real estate. He just did an introduction to, flip the note or sell the property or whatever. And then they had an expert witness come in and explain that it doesn't matter what you call the fee or the transaction. It's an unlicensed real estate brokerage, and if the dominant feature of the transaction is real estate, they were reading laws and stuff. Somebody's going to steal that. They were reading laws and stuff and just saying, like, if the dominant, they just said this is a real estate transaction and you guys are kind of full of it. And then they went over the laws, and now the jury has to decide if they are or are not full of it. The robot is not doing anything new. I tell you, if they had that robot walking around in the store talking to people, that would be incredibly impressive. And frankly, until they have that, like, why don't they have that? Now we're back to having this clicking, so what is causing that? Oh yeah, this also came out today. So Felix Sater secretly recorded conversations with Ilya Krapanov. And then remember, Robert Wolf wrote that letter, the subject, or maybe it was an email, and the subject was Sater v. Krapanov and Ablaziov. And Mr. Zach, I believe, rightly interpreted that as a threatening legal letter saying, we're going to sue you if you don't do X, Y, or Z. And it ultimately did lead to a settlement between Felix and Ilya Krapanov. That was written by Robert Wolf, 2008. Right, so see, this was the other thing. This was clarified today. Robert Wolf contacted BTA Bank and said, hey, we have information about this. We're in the asset recovery business. I have a client in the asset recovery business, and we can bring you witnesses, and gave them some sort of sample of the type of information that they have. And so he contacted BTA, I guess via Latham and Watkins. Because remember yesterday or something, Felix said that he approached Latham and Watkins, clarified now that he did that through his attorney, Robert Wolf. And he's been working with this attorney for like 25 years, but the attorney says that Felix, Maybach, the attorney says that Felix is only a very small part of his legal practice, yet he's working with the guy for 25 years. He goes on vacation with him. Their wives go to dinner. He's getting $20 million checks from him. It's interesting. Yeah, and then they were looking at business transactions from MEM Energy Partners, sending money around for no real reason. And in 2018, Robert Wolf, it was determined, I believe by Judge Parker, it was determined that Robert Wolf lied about Litco. There was a lot of evidence presented today that definitely causes me to agree that it seemed like, here's the Rolex store, seemed like they were trying to really hide Felix Sater's involvement with Litco and do it in a sort of super tricky way. I don't understand why there's not somebody just hanging out outside and robbing people who come out with the new Rolex. Shouldn't do that, but here's for lease. This is expensive real estate right here in the same building as the Soho House. I guess they don't have any signage there, but that's a super exclusive, swanky club. Yeah, so Sater recorded these conversations with Ilyas Krapanov, and Krapanov had been directing Sater, and so as part of the agreement, the recordings of Ilyas Krapanov were destroyed. I mean, that's extortion, isn't it? Oh yeah, and so we also found out that Peter Garci, he was the vice president of Arcanum Asia, which is a Hong Kong company. Now, I haven't found that yet. I was looking at Arcanum that's registered in the United States and operates out of the United States, and that's all former US intelligence people. Didn't look like any kind of Hong Kong business, but he was also associated with RJI Capital, I think. These guys were just like crossing the street with headphones, not looking, against the light. Pretty crazy. But so Peter Garci is allegedly dead. The thing is, he's young. I found a picture of him from not that long ago. He's very hard to find a picture of, but there was a picture from, he was with, I put it on Twitter. What was his law firm that he was with? People can follow me if you're not on Twitter. The story is kind of going out in all different directions, but follow me on Twitter if you aren't already, at JG_CSTT. I noticed that I lost like 200 Twitter followers overnight last night. There's a lot of people maybe getting purged off of, oh wait, they're back now. Weird. Well, anyway, our buddy here, Peter Garci, let's see what his law firm was again. Here's Fine Law. So small. Yeah, Squire Patton Boggs, which was somehow Hale Boggs was involved in that. Well, he's dead, obviously. Anyway, I don't know what's up with Peter Garci, but he claims to be dead as well. I wonder if he's dead like Robert David Steele, because sometimes these guys get themselves jammed up, and perhaps being dead in the United States is the easiest way to deal with that. See, why doesn't Google put American flags in there? Google is a... So, Peter Garci, he's a very curious guy because he's very difficult to find. I also found his name on a couple of lawsuits that I guess, he was counsel in. And he seemed to be sort of like the general counsel for Felix Sater's illegal operation, because he's hiring lawyers, he's firing lawyers, he's negotiating contracts. At least that makes a little more sense. He's not just some ex-CIA douche, he's a lawyer, so if he's unhappy with how the other lawyers are negotiating, I guess you could see how another lawyer might convince the bank that he should negotiate it. But so the other thing that Felix Sater was anxious to tell me today is that Arcanum was working with Christopher Steele to try to get Trump arrested. And he's like, report that. So it's like, listen, Felix, I get it that you think you're being clever, you know, planting inside whatever on me, but this type of crap doesn't work on me. And I mean, I'm reporting it, I'm telling people what he said, but I'm not saying, oh, this is the fact. I'm saying, I think Felix is full of shit and trying to redirect me. He might not even be full of shit on this. So, okay, let's say he's telling me the truth. Arcanum was working with Christopher Steele to do something with the Steele dossier and to get Trump thrown in jail. Okay, I believe that. And I also think that Felix Sater was in on that program as well, because I've seen many emails that he sent to Michael Cohen saying, oh, Trump Tower Moscow. This is 2015, by the way. Trump Tower Moscow, this is great. We'll get Trump to go there and we'll make it a whole event. So see, Felix, he's very into PR. And actually, I've known other real estate guys like that who, you know, every project, this one, we're gonna make a video with a drone, and this one, we're gonna have a concert, open it. Yeah, so they're always trying to do something to bring attention to these projects, to these properties. So, I mean, again, Felix is also super duper spycraft. I mean, you know, even if you're a schlub, when you get into an industry for 25 years, you're gonna know certain things and act a certain way. Holy cow. Oh, it's tomatoes. I thought, But this is spycraft stuff. He's trying to get Trump to Russia. Don't we think we would then have surveillance video of Trump walking into a hotel in Moscow in 2015? And if we had that, don't you think we could find the Russian equivalent of Stormy Daniels, some hooker, you know, pay Svetlana the hooker to say, yes, Mr. Trump paid me to urinate on the bed, or whatever. That's a bad Russian accent, but you know what I'm talking about. It seemed like Felix Sater was putting the pieces in place. And by the way, whenever he is talking to me in court or yelling at some other attorney that I'm trying to talk to, he's like, oh, this guy thinks I tried to set up Donald Trump. I forget exactly what he said, but just like Julie, his accusation is not accurate to what I'm saying. I do believe that he set up Donald Trump, and I'm explaining to you, or he attempted to, but he's going to do it in such a way that Trump doesn't know that he's doing it, that he's got an excuse. Oh, no, I wasn't trying to set you up to have photographs taken of you getting into a hotel that we would then accuse you of, you know, doing whatever the Steele dossier said to have evidence against you. No, 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 I just wanted to promote the Trump Tower Moscow. I just don't understand how Trump doesn't realize what an idiot Felix Sater is, or that he's working against him. And by the way, that's why I used this picture of Sater with Bill Clinton. That you can't find on the internet using Google. Why? They seem to have gotten rid of it. It's a great picture of Felix Sater. And by the way, this is fairly recent. Look at Bill Clinton. He looks like he's in his 70s. It's not like this is from 1980 or something like that. He seems to be good old friends with Bill Clinton. Believe it or not, Lenny Lipton had this car. This is the Toyota version. He had the, I think this car is also made by Subaru. It's an interesting little car. But anyway, see, it's like this. George, back in 2017, he calls me and he says, hey, I've got information coming from Okie Marshall Richards. It's going to be huge. I'll call you when I get to whatever, but get a stream ready and make the title Clear and Present Danger, Calm Before the Storm. So I say, okay, George, you and I have been working towards an effort where I'm the video producer and you're the reporter. So this is how we've been working it, where you just sort of come up with title ideas and I make an image and set a stream to deal with that. And then months later, they come along with some part of the plan that I didn't know about. And they say, oh, look, Jason must have invented QAnon because he named his thing Calm Before the Storm. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, does that mean that George knew that? Maybe not. I don't think George is a mastermind. I think George is an idiot. I also don't think that Felix Sater is the mastermind, but I think he takes instructions from people and he goes and does things like tell Donald Trump to go to Russia during this time frame or whatever. Somebody wanted him there. I think Felix is part of a plan and has been for a long time to frame Trump. Why does Trump want to be so close to somebody who did all this stuff with Bill Clinton? And then at some point, Robert Wolf in 2015 sends the letter to Sater. I mean, you'd really need to sit down with maybe Trump Jr. or, I don't know, you'd ever get the time to talk to them extensively about this relatively unimportant guy, Felix Sater, but right, then they went through the different things that they did to try to hide Felix Sater. And this guy, Calsum Cam, signed on behalf of Litco, but then they played they had a video deposition of him, and he looks like a Kazakhstan guy, and they were asking him, like, did you sign on behalf of Litco? And he's like, I might have. And they said, are you the principal? And he said, do you have a role there? He said, I might have a role. It's like, what kind of answers are these? Either you're the owner of the company or you're not. And remember, Felix Sater said that the thing was a single member-controlled LLC. He was very clear in that, said it immediately. He remembered that, of course. So that's the thing, there's certain things that he remembers and wants you to know about, and other things that are kind of vague. And so they said that this entire contract is invalid because by hiding Felix Sater's involvement with Litco, they fraudulently induced the bank to sign this contract with the intent of releasing Litco. But you can't do that. You can't fraudulently induce people to do stuff and then say, oh, well, you signed. Oh, man, so I guess Seymour's Fish Restaurant is out of business. Well, yeah, Robert Wolf reached out to BTA Bank. So it just all reeks of being, a scheme cooked up by Felix Sater and executed with the help of his attorney. They're arguing that the contract is not valid because it's not signed by anyone who has legal authority to sign on behalf of Litco. They should have hammered on that more, I think. Calstrom Cam, how can he sign it? It's invalid, the whole contract. So it's fraudulent inducement. Wolf admitted that Litco worked exclusively for Arcanum, and they deliberately kept Sater's name out. And by as late as 2018, they were still hiding Sater's involvement. So this was the next thing that he absolutely destroyed. So they spent a lot of time in the cross-examination with John Snyder talking about this June 5th meeting with Peter Garsky, where, remember, they went to the restaurant and Robert Wolf explained that he doesn't drink. So he left after dinner, and then those guys stayed and were drinking all kinds of wine, getting hammered. And what was pointed out today by Mr. Zach is that nobody has presented any, dinner check, no receipt from the restaurant. He showed the bill, the billing ledger for Robert Wolf, And he said, hey, you know, there are ethical rules around lawyer billing, and we bill by the hour, so like this is a super duper important thing to be accurate. And he showed that June 5th, in the billing records for Robert Wolf, they had only billed half an hour for editing this document, didn't say anything about going to dinner. And they even asked Robert Wolf when he was on cross-examination, is it possible that it was accidentally billed to another client? And Robert Wolf said, no, I don't think that would happen. So that was interesting. And the reason that June 5th meeting is important is because the confidential assistance agreement is, see, they're closing all of the weed stores. Isn't that weird? They don't close any of the illegal Louis Vuitton things, but all of the weed stores have closed. Obviously, I would say the cops are in on the Louis Vuitton grift, not the weed. Somebody wants illegal Louis Vuitton stuff to get sold. So the point of the June 5th meeting and all this testimony from Felix Sater is he's explaining that the guy who's now dead, I told him at that meeting all about Litco, is what Felix Sater is saying. But now they then showed or cited the transcript from a deposition that Felix Sater did in July maybe of 2018, where Felix Sater said that he first met Peter Garsky in July of 2015. So that would be after the agreement was signed. And their whole argument is that they're saying that Garsky was basically working for the bank, and Garsky knew that Litco was Felix Sater, so therefore the bank knew. It's a tenuous argument that's gotten less convincing. I can't believe these guys are leaving all of their stuff outside. I would think maybe nobody wants to buy this or even steal it. That's crazy to me. Oh, wait a minute, are we on? No, we're not even on the street where the police precinct is. It's odd.
I think it's more of like a club.
So yeah, June 5th, they're talking about how Felix Sater mentioned June 5th about 50 times. And the whole point of that meeting was to claim that Litco is Sater. And Robert Wolf billed only a half hour, shows no records whatsoever of having billed, and they could have presented that evidence. The defense could have presented. They made a point of saying, where is the sign-in registry? You know, this is his attorney. Robert Wolf and Moses Singer represent Felix Sater. They're buddies for 25 years. If there were evidence in the records of Moses Singer that would prove what Felix is saying, why did they only have one exhibit that was an Italian news article? That seems to be nonsense. This is electric, I'm pretty sure. Whoops. That was weird. What is this? BMW X something. X Drive 50iX. Yeah, that makes sense for how they name SUVs and electric things. No restaurant receipt. I mean, that's just it. And they're making up all these stories. They have no evidence. I mean, this is good fodder for, you know, your Felix Sater research blog, but this doesn't hold up in court. This is what I was going to say. So Julie wants to present you with that blog, but the thing that's helpful about this is that we've got this adversarial process. It's not just Felix telling you what happened. It's Felix saying this is what happened, and then these people adverse to him coming along and saying, well, that's not what happened because you lied about it 4 years ago or 6 years ago. You have no evidence to prove that what you're saying now has happened, and you're a convicted fraudster and felon. So the presumption that you're a liar is kind of okay. 2022, he said he met Garsky in July. And then he said that that was a mistake under oath at this trial. He just said that was a mistake. So it's like, really? Do you believe this guy? In 2018, he lied in a deposition and said he never discussed Litco with Arcanum. So that's the thing, there's all this contradictory testimony here, and it's Boyce Schiller's position that the June 5th meeting never happened. I think that's true. I don't understand why a lawyer like Snyder isn't found in contempt or perjury for coming in there and lying all about this meeting. It's a strange thing. So even under this fake June 5th story, he still doesn't discuss Litco with Arcanum. So even within the lie, it doesn't fit their overall lie. And so then he went into this to me was the nail in the coffin. Because Felix Sater, remember, he's saying, oh, these guys are suing me because we got all their money back and then they just decided they didn't want to pay me. And it's like, well, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, because if you're some expert investigator who helped the bank and got them their money back, why would they suddenly decide not to pay you? I think they'd want to, most smart people and giant companies don't want to immediately destroy the relationship and screw over a person who just provided a service that they're likely to need again. They would pay you and say, hey, thanks. Here's 20% off a haircut. I've never seen that before. They must be struggling. And another weed store put out of business. So, but the nail in the coffin is that he's saying that whole they just decided to sue you because they don't want to pay you doesn't hold up, because they've got this line in here, little subheading E, said no witness may have ownership interest in Litco. So basically that means either Felix Sater can't be a witness, which he already was, or he can't have ownership in Litco, or, the contract itself is sort of inherently displaying this fraudulent inducement. It's a weird, I don't understand how this contract got written and anybody agreed that they were gonna do it, but it did. And what he's saying is that it just shows that BTA never intended to pay Felix Sater. Sater is a witness. He tells them to subpoena his bank account. So he's basically laying out what I had sort of surmised yesterday. Felix Sater, after 2008 banking crisis, when they discovered that this was a crisis, after the 2008 banking crisis, that's when the bank discovered that this money all got stolen. And so then, that's when it seems to me that Felix Sater said, oh, we need a complicated plan. He's very into locking in his own immunity, doing crimes, and then making confidential deals that get him off the hook. In fact, it's what he's done his whole entire life. I wouldn't be surprised if he would even tell somebody, don't worry, I'm going to set it up so that we can steal all the money and nobody goes to jail, because he's that kind of guy. He wants you to think, he's your guy, he's your fixer, he makes things happen, he's the special senior advisor to Donald Trump. I wonder if the Trump organization gave him that title and business card, or if he just printed that damn thing up himself. But also, Sater is not a party to the agreement because this Colson Cam signed it. There's just no way. The defense ignored the limiting parameters of this contract and just, the bank makes it abundantly clear that they're just not going to release guilty parties, and that they could probably tell that that's what Felix Sater was trying to do. And so then they just went over some more details, but basically, the other thing that the plaintiffs did was that they last night entered a motion pursuant to Rule 50 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, which is basically asking the court to make a decision before the jury rules, because no reasonable jury, given these facts, could find in favor of the defendant. And the judge had some technical reason why. I think he said that the importance of the jury is so great that we're not going to do that, but he denied it without prejudice, so that if after, it was because the jury is the finder of fact, he said. I didn't quite exactly follow this, but he denied it without prejudice so that it could be brought back after the verdict if something, and I'm not sure what. But I tend to agree with the plaintiffs here that I don't see how a reasonable jury could find in favor of Felix Sater. It seems like he did it and he's about to get into a lot of trouble, but it might be on the docket now, or we might know by tomorrow, or they might take another couple days of deliberating. I'll be on tonight at 8 p.m. with Charles, so don't miss that. And please become a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. They've just announced, I think they said July 11th, they have the biggest upgrade to the thing that they've ever had. I guess it's going to be their decentralized censorship resistance. I'm excited to see that. It's free to subscribe, and for only $3 a month, you can become a member on there and access the sponsor exclusive content and help support the show, where I can keep going and go. Oh, one more important thing. I did get to speak to that guy, Matthew Lee, what's his name? Matthew Lee Russell. And I'll tell you, he's a cagey, nervous, weird guy. Or at least he is around me. I do have that tendency with some people. I asked him, I said, you were covering my case about the Emmys, and he was like, yeah. He knew about it right away. And that was 4 years ago. I'm surprised he didn't say, which case was that? Who are you? The Emmys versus who? Because, by the way, it was the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, not the Emmys. If you're just a random guy covering every single trial, would you necessarily equate me saying, hey, my case with the Emmys, with the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences versus Multimedia System Design, Inc., DBA, Crowdsource, The Truth? I mean, again, it seemed to be somebody who, my normal impression would be to approach this guy and him say, I'm sorry, I don't know you. What case are you talking about? Oh, right. So, but what he said was, because my beef with this guy is that he seemed to be covering it from like the Robert David Steele, George's brother standpoint of Jason is losing this case, whereas other people who now in the years have gone by, there are copyright attorneys who have written law articles about this where they say things like, this is kind of unbelievable that they found this thing to be a copyright. There goes that century. The guy's driving. Like uninvolved people look at this case and say, what the hell is going on with this case? How is this not a parody? This guy, ostensibly having never seen me before, knew exactly what I was talking about when I said, hey, you covered my case about the Emmys and, why were you... And then he said that he stopped covering it because one of the participants had given him pushback. And I said, that was probably me telling you that you were publishing bullshit. And I just felt like I was dealing with a social engineer. I don't know that guy. This is my opinion from meeting him and speaking with him and looking at his articles. I think he's a liar and a social engineer who's in on this mix. And part of this whole, hey, you're going to push this about this story. Because you know what? Somebody looks at that and they say, oh, SDNY blog, if that's the only news they have about that. When people are searching around for these things, whether it's Felix Sater or Jason Goodman, they want to plant certain information out there so that whether you're the jury or the lawyer or the judge or the public or Donald Trump or whatever, that's what they're basically doing. But got a lot of interesting insights from going to this Felix Sater. Oh yeah, and one more thing. So then when I was leaving the court, I saw that lawyer, Miss Nardi, the Kazakhstan lawyer for the bank. And I said to her, hey, when this is all over, can I talk to you? And I mean, I'm like standing there in the middle of the courtyard in front of the court. I guess this guy just lost his Uber. She's driving away and he's running with a Pelican case. Can still get her, dude. So anyway, Miss Nardi, I was just standing there talking to her, saying, no, this guy's getting charged for missing it. and she's going to go get her next ride. That's why I hate Uber. They love doing that. So I was just standing there talking to Ms. Nardi saying, hey, can I talk to you about this afterwards? Felix Sater runs up and says to her in Russian, do you have a light? He's got a cigarette in his hand. And I told him, Felix, why are you following me around? And then in what they admitted was perfect Russian, I told him to stick his finger up his ass. He started, saying stuff to her. And so why is Felix Sater so concerned about me speaking to these lawyers? See, because a big part of me is feeling like Felix Sater cannot lose in the Southern District of New York. He's a made man there. Valerie Caproni is protecting him. He said ad nauseum, he doesn't give a shit about Valerie Caproni, because he would go up to every single one of these people that I was talking to and tell them, oh, this guy thinks that I framed Donald Trump with Stormy Daniels or something like that. And I said, no, I didn't say that. But he's super interested in me talking to Nardi, talking to Matt Schwartz. Why? I would, if I had to guess, having seen none of this, I would say no matter what the jury decides, no matter what the judge decides, something will happen in court that will prevent Felix Sater from experiencing any kind of negative, repercussions from this as far as having to pay a lot of money. Something will happen. There'll be an appeal, something will be overturned, something will whatever. As soon as these guys all go back to Kazakhstan, and it's at the moment where it's the maximum expense and pain in the ass for them to redo it, something favorable to Felix Sater is likely to happen, because I think he's a made guy. But if that's the case, why does he care who I speak to or what I do? Why wouldn't he just ignore me? See, you would expect somebody with that level of contacts and control and everything to act like the Borg in Star Trek and just totally ignore you until you pose a threat. That's how that Borg works. The second you start posing a threat, that's when they grab you immediately. So to me, that would indicate that a conversation between Jason Goodman and BTA Bank seems to represent some kind of threat to Felix Sater. I don't really care about Felix Sater. My beef is with Jonathan Snyder. And the only reason I'm talking about Felix Sater is that he seems to be at the heart of the matter. That's all I know about it for now, but thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see everybody tonight at 8 o'clock with Charles. We're going to talk about Julian Assange. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court overturning Missouri v.